Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined by my co-host tonight, Kendall Mursky. You can find him on Twitter at Mursky Kendall. Together, we are the Bills guys. This is the Air Raid Hour presented by Picasso's Pizza.net. That's right. We are the flagship sponsor of the show is Picasso's Pizza.net. Head on over to that website, or if you are local in Buffalo, they have 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. If you're outside of the delivery range, you can always utilize things like DoorDash to still get it delivered to you in the Western New York area. And if you are out of the Western New York area, I'm telling you what, one of these days I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm going to make the purchase. You can get them delivered to you all over the country. I miss those little pepperoni cups. Those things don't exist in most places outside of Western New York. So you can get your frozen Picasso's Pizza mailed to you all over the country with our flagship sponsor, Picasso's Pizza. Once again, you can find them at Picasso's Pizza.net. All right. So I was going to lead off this show with Von Miller, right? Like, all right, the Bills signed Von Miller. Von Miller had all these crazy cool things to say about Buffalo today. We're just going to man crush it for the first, 15 minutes of the show. But then kind of in typical NFL fashion, Davante Adams decided he didn't want to be a Green Bay Packer anymore. And he gets traded to the Las Vegas Raiders to be reunited with Derek Carr, his Fresno State teammate, and just leaving everyone just sort of jaw dropped and baffled as to what exactly is going on in the National Football League. Kendall, I'm going to start with you. One of two things I see it needs to happen here. Either the NFC just needs to fold, maybe take a couple of teams with them over to the AFC and we can just have a season without the NFC, or the winner of the NFC just has to beat the winner of the AFC in a 3-game series. Like they need to win 2 out of 1.
We could do some sort of like relegation system where someone who's really good in the NFC gets to graduate to the AFC and the worst AFC team has to go to the NFC, something like that. It's wild. This arms race that's going on in the AFC is absolutely crazy. Obviously there's rumors coming out that the Packers offered Davante Adams a similar type of deal, but like the writing was on the wall and he just needed a change of scenery.
It's almost like culture matters.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
For years, whether it was the way Brett Favre exited Green Bay or the Aaron Rodgers stuff the past couple of years, there just seems to be, and again, I don't follow the team closely, so this is a casual observer of what's going on there. So I could be dead wrong, and somebody who knows the Green Bay Packers better than me could come in and be like, you're an idiot. But as a casual observer, it sure as heck looks to me like there is a disconnect between the players in Green Bay and the front office and the coaching staff in Green Bay. There always just seems to be this very like cold sort of environment that they've created up there in Green Bay. Jordan Phillips came back today to Buffalo and he talks about like, it's more than just about the money here. It's about the teammates in the locker room and like, our families grow up together, our kids grow up together, et cetera. Like he talks about that like familial atmosphere here in Buffalo. Yep. It just seems so cold. And pardon my phrasing here because they're way up north in Green Bay, but it just seems so cold and rigid there. And there doesn't seem to be like much of a relationship between the front office and the players, between the franchise and the players. There just seems to be a disconnect up there. So it really looks and appears like culture really truly does matter. But what else matters is a franchise quarterback. And that's what we are going to lead off today's show with, just a rundown. And it's on the bottom scroll. We brought that back, the bottom scroll. It was about time. This offseason has been so crazy that we brought back the bottom scroll, the bottom ticker, sort of like on ESPN. And there's a rundown of all the various different moves. And these are the moves that happened today. And boy, were there a ton. Von Miller, OJ Howard, Tim Settle, Daquan Jones were all officially announced. The Buffalo Bills then officially announced Jordan Phillips after it was rumored to have happened yesterday. And they officially announced the signing of Shaq Lawson. So the Buffalo Bills in total added 6 players to their roster today. So they all signed. Most of them were made available to the media. The Buffalo Bills also officially released Cole Beasley. Ryan Bates is reported to be visiting Minnesota. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. He's on the RFA tender. And per Ryan Talbot, the Bills have preliminary interest in free agent linebacker Alex Singleton from the Philadelphia Eagles, who was a restricted free agent, but did not get tendered by the Eagles, despite having, I think, like 100+ tackles last season. Let's start with Von Miller. His press conference, he made it pretty clear. The analogy he used was he had to break up with one girlfriend who did absolutely nothing wrong to get with a new girlfriend in the Buffalo Bills. He chose us over the LA Rams when he had comparable contracts. And he said the reason why he joined the Buffalo Bills were he just heard the stories of the culture here. He said the Buffalo Bills would have won a Super Bowl with or without him. He talked about his relationship with guys like Stephon Diggs and even Jerry Hughes going back to the Pro Bowl, and how Mr. International Stephon Diggs, if he has good things to say about Buffalo, you know it's got to be pretty good there. And then, of course, he brought up Josh Allen, who we referred to as a creature. When I believe he meant to talk about him as a beast. I don't know. Creature doesn't really scare me. I think beast is better. But what were your thoughts on what Von Miller had to say in his initial press conference? I mean, the man is he's a superstar. And he carries himself like a superstar, and he just has this out of this world personality, and he carried himself in that way. What were your thoughts on that press conference today?
I thought he came off as super, super genuine, and while being super genuine, he also showed a ton of energy and excitement, which is really nice. But the genuine part to it, and I got to scroll back because I saw someone comment it. Here it is. Y says, love settles presser, but Miller seemed to have buyer's remorse, in my opinion. And I think there's some fairness to have that opinion, because he mentioned the Rams so many times and like how much he hates having to leave them and all of that stuff. And it's understandable. Yeah. And I could see, like, from Bills Mafia perspective, you're like, shut up, like, talk about the Bills, like, just love us now. But there's still a transition period. He's still human, and he built some good relationships over there in LA. So it's got to be hard for him to move on. And I think he did it in a really genuine way, showing how much he respects those guys over there. And he mentioned it would take something really, really special to get me to leave LA and go somewhere else. And that place was Buffalo. So I think it's understandable to feel like, why isn't he talking about Buffalo better? But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. You could tell he was excited.
Yeah. And I think Von needs to maybe get used to something. I think maybe Von thought that press conference was being broadcast like on every news network live. And maybe he was just trying to make the Rams fans understand. Like, listen, I didn't want to leave you. I just thought this was a really great situation. I had to do what was best for me. You know, goodbye. But like, I mean, I turned on. I'm not about to like get down the rabbit hole of Buffalo is disrespected, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I turned on the Midnight Sports Center last night, not midnight my time because I'm out here on the West Coast. But after the basketball game last night, Scott Van Pelt, the Midnight Sports Center he does it from DC. They didn't mention Von Miller till 25-30 minutes in. Like, it was not the thing that led Sports Center. Devontae Adams is going to lead Sports Center tonight.
Yeah.
Von Miller did not lead Sports Center. He came in after the Notre Dame the Notre Dame game. He came in after Freddie Freeman signing it with the Dodgers. Like, it was 20-25 minutes into the show that Von Miller. So I think Von Miller's sitting here thinking all the cameras are on him and it's being simulcast on like 4 different national networks. And he had to justify himself to Rams fans who will probably never see any of that press conference. So I would cut the guy some slack. I think it's he's an NFL superstar. He's now on his 3rd different team. And I think he just doesn't want to burn any bridges. Yeah. I think he's quite content with where he is. You know, I don't think the buyer's remorse would come until like mid-season if maybe it's not going the way he planned. Yeah. But I don't think you're going to start seeing any of that type of real ridiculous buyer's remorse until you get to that point. Until you get to that point in the season where maybe things aren't going well for the Bills. But man, it was just so awesome to see him up there on that stage. And like I said, absolutely incredible. Talking about some of the other things, we're going to leave off OJ Howard because we're going to come back to the offense later. There's sort of like a thematics to the rest of the signings, and that theme is defensive line. Absolutely just incredible additions to the defensive line. Daquan Jones didn't speak to the media, which I thought was weird, but he signed his contract. And he sent out a video where he just said Josh fucking Allen really loudly onto like what was like a viral, like, you know, TikTok or whatever. So Daquan Jones made it pretty clear why he came to Buffalo, and that was Josh effing Allen. So that's 2 players who mentioned Josh Allen as one of the reasons why they came to the Buffalo Bills. OJ Howard mentioned him as well. That's really the only thing of note with Daquan Jones because he didn't get a chance to talk to the media. Yeah. Tim Settle, I think the biggest thing of note, first of all, great personality. I think he's everyone's fan favorite now. Yeah. especially after Sal Capaccio called his young son a girl, and then his young son started crying,
having a temper tantrum.
Poor Sal. But yeah, it was. We got Clayton Waller coming in saying he totally gave the Bills love. He said he only left because the Bills are special, and that's true.
Exactly. Yeah.
This dude thinks that the Buffalo Bills are more special than a team that just added Allen Robinson today, said they still have money for Odell Beckham and have Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd on that defense and are bringing it all back, coaching staff included. So, Von Miller left all of that to come to Buffalo. So that shows you what kind of team we're building here. And Jordan Phillips got into that a little bit as well. And M. Garazi says the Bills' money is also special. I mean, hey, money talks. And the Buffalo Bills valued Von Miller and they wanted to pay him. But the biggest, I think, news that came out of the Tim Settle press conference, don't get me wrong, in the fact that I think he's a really good dude, is he mentioned his playing weight was 308.
Right. Yeah.
And he felt really comfortable playing under 310. So we all assume that Tim Settle is this big, bulky dude, and he looks like a big, bulky dude on the field, but he weighed in at the combine at 329. He's 308. Like, he plays under 310. He said he plays under 310. He's been playing under 310 since about halfway through. He lost all that weight his first season with the Washington football team, now the Washington Commanders. What are your thoughts on that? Like, he's a pure 3-tech now, right? Like, there's no question about it. You're not going to be seeing him lining up at the 1-tech.
I disagree. I think we'll see him in a hybrid role. I don't know if we'll see him like as a true, he's going to be our 1-tech type of thing. And if anyone watched the film room, I don't think there's anything that would tell you that he's going to be that true 1-tech, but I think there's potential there. And let's be honest, I don't even think Harrison Phillips was playing heavier than 310 pounds, and he was our 1-tech. So, and Starr came in lighter this year, and he was playing 1-tech. So it's kind of, to me, less about weight than it is how you play. And I think, we don't know what Daquan Jones is playing at. Like you said, he didn't even hit the podium, but he plays like a proper run defender, a proper 1-tech, someone who can get their eyes in the backfield, stack and shed, 2-gap, all that stuff. Settle has the power to do that, and you can see that in his pass rushing chops. But for whatever reason, when he's not like the aggressor and he kind of just has to hold his ground and keep a stalemate at the line of scrimmage, for whatever reason, it's just a little bit more difficult for him. So there's potential there. Yeah. You can see like he knows what he wants to do, but he can't physically put it together yet. And he's only 25. Well, will be 25 years old when the season starts. So I'm not here to say he's like, he's pigeonholed as a backup 3-tech, but I think he's someone that can come in and play like third down, likely passing down 1-tech role, something like that, where he's not going to be on for obvious rundowns, but he'll be on for, we think they're going to pass, but they could run. You're a heavier dude, a powerful dude. We like you in this quasi 1-tech spot for this kind of passing down.
Yeah, and I'm going to put up a graphic of the Buffalo Bills defensive line in just a second here, and we're going to talk about like how are the Buffalo Bills going to use all of these different chess pieces. So that's what we're going to get into next. But one more press conference. I have always just had a fascination with Jordan Phillips and just the way he interacts with people on whether it's on social media or whether it's with the media. I just love his brutal honesty. And that was such a great press conference, I think, from Jordan Phillips. I think Greg Tomsett had the line of the day in the Twitter, in our Cover One Twitter DM chat. He said that Jordan Phillips is such a large man, but he sounds like a 190-pound accountant. Like, he just does not have the voice. He does not have the bark to match the bite that he plays with or the size of the man he is. That was a pretty funny comment, but just in hearing Jordan Phillips talk today, he shared a number of notable stories. First of all, it's like, why would you come here? And he's like, the quarterback is Josh Allen. You have one of the best wide receivers in the league in Stephon Diggs. You have the two best safeties in the league in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. You have like, he mentioned like, you have one of the best linebackers in the league. You have Trey White. Like, why would I not come here? Like, we're Super Bowl contenders. Like, we have Von Miller now. Like, why would anyone not come here? And, he mentioned that. He mentioned his relationship with Leslie Frazier when when he was drafted by Miami. It was not a good culture fit. He did not get along with the coaching staff in the front office there in Miami. And part of that was one of the reasons why they got rid of him and they waived him. And the Buffalo Bills were able to pick him up and have him on this roster, 3-4 years ago when they picked him up. And he mentioned, he's like, yeah, I came to Buffalo. I got picked up by them off of waivers. I had this really good game against Tennessee. And I was kind of full of myself, and I had sort of a lazy practice on a Wednesday, and Leslie Frazier like lit into me. He said, listen, I don't care how many tackles you get in a game. You show up to practice and you half-ass it like you just did. There's no place for you on this football team. And Jordan Phillips was kind of like, well, here we go again. Like it's not going to be a fit. But over time, he realized, sort of the tough love approach that Leslie Frazier brought. And he talked about sort of a relationship that he built with Leslie Frazier. That was really cool to hear, just his relationship with the coaching staff. He mentioned like, it's more than about the money here. It's about the fact that we're a family. Like we raise our kids together, things of that nature. So hearing him talk about that stuff was super cool as well. So just an all around great interview from Jordan Phillips. Agreed. He closed the interview. Mookie like shouted as he was walking off the podium, like, hey, what about your boy Shaq? He's like, I told him, sign the contract.
5 minutes later,
Shaq Lawson. So apparently the story goes is the Buffalo Bills just have matching contracts, like both like sort of like veteran minimum deals. If you go onto Twitter, Greg Tom sort of broke it down. The NFL has these rules that allows you to keep some of these veteran guys on the roster for less money. You get like 2 per team. Greg Tom said, like I said, he did a great job breaking it down on Twitter. You can go over there. Apparently the Bills probably just offered both Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson those 2 like minimum deals. Said, here, sign it or go find somewhere else. And Jordan Phillips signed it. I think Shaq might have been a little hesitant. Maybe he wanted to test the market.
And Jordan bullied him.
Jordan Phillips just bullied him into signing the contract. He signed it 5 minutes later. So that was super funny. So now the Buffalo Bills add a ton of bodies. We have a super chat here from your boy. Let us always appreciate it. Your boy, he says, if Watson chooses Atlanta, Atlanta trades Ryan to Seattle. Seattle trades Locke to us. We draft Punt God. We win the offseason. So he's not willing to give up on his 2 dreams this offseason, Drew Lock and the Punt God. So I always appreciate that. Your boy let us. Yeah, that drama going on today. It's crazy. It's crazy, the drama going on. So it appears like Deshaun Watson is down to the NFL is the NBA now.
The Panthers just got ruled out, by the way.
Panthers and Browns. Even though some people are like, well, the Browns still have a chance. The Browns still have a chance. It's down to Atlanta or New Orleans for Deshaun Watson. Apparently Baker, it looks like maybe Seattle is interested in Baker. It's just a whole bunch of mess surrounding Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson. You got Devontae Adams throwing in there. Zadarius Smith changing his mind. Yeah. Maybe because the Rams or the Cowboys came a-calling once Von Miller decided to up and leave for Buffalo. Right. Like I said, the NFL is the NBA now. It's getting pretty crazy, it's pretty cool. And it's also nice to sit back and there are just all these really inept teams, right? Like you have the Carolina Panthers who have all these like pretty decent football players, a really good defense, really good offensive skill position players. And Deshaun Watson's like, fuck you. I have no interest in coming to play for you. Your owner is brand new and just throwing money around at anything. And your head coach is a moron in Matt Rule, who I don't want to play for. You got the Cleveland Browns essentially saying, hey, Baker, we want to be in an open relationship. But only we're allowed to be the ones who go out looking for, like, there's just all of this mess around the National Football League. And it's just nice that the Buffalo Bills are probably the most stable franchise in football, or one of the most stable franchises in football. So it's nice to just sort of sit back, relax, watch the chaos unfold, watch Patriots fans lose their mind as every single free agent chooses anyone but them. It's just, it's really fun to see. And the number one thing I want to talk about today, and one of the things that we're going to do during today's show is we're actually going to sort of roll through the depth chart, position group by position group, and talk about like, hey, what do we need still? And I want to go a little out of order here. And I want to start with the defensive line. I'm going to throw up the defensive line depth chart here just because I don't think we need to add anything. I know Aaron and Greg were talking on last night about how the Bills could probably still afford to add Jerry Hughes, and like Von Miller can play 65% of the snaps and Jerry Hughes can play 35% of the snaps. And you can have like a rotation of Von Miller and Jerry Hughes on the right side of your defensive line. That's pretty darn good. It's possible. I would rather go for a veteran corner, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I mean, look at this Buffalo Bills defensive line. You got at right end, you got Von Miller, AJ Epinesa, Mike Love. At the one tech, you have Daquan Jones, for now, Star Latulele, and Eli Anku. At the 3 tech, you got Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, and you got Brandon Bryant. And at left end, you have Gregory Rousseau, Boogie Basham, and Shaq Lawson. So you're bringing back Shaq Lawson, Jordan Phillips. You're bringing in these 3 other pretty nice ticket free agents to add to four guys really that you drafted, because at Oliver too, that you drafted in the first 2 rounds of the draft. I mean, this is an absolutely loaded defensive front. Brandon Beane has made it clear what his priority was this offseason. He did a damn good job of addressing it here along the defensive line. My question to you, Kendall, is that is a dearth of 3 techs. Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, Harrison Phillips, Jordan Phillips, excuse me. You got Gregory Rousseau, who's got inside flex. You got Boogie Basham, who's got inside flex. Shaq Lawson, who can kick inside to 3 tech. We're so used to seeing the Buffalo Bills run sort of this 43 type of defense where they play a lot of nickel. That's not Von Miller's game. He's very much a stand-up type of guy over there on whatever side of the ball he plays with. And we have so many of those 3 techs. Could we see a legitimate philosophical shift from the Buffalo Bills away from maybe some of the things that Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier are comfortable with in order to put Von Miller in the best position to rush the passer and to put some of these other defensive linemen, Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, all these other guys who are maybe a little bit more heavy set in a better position to not only stop the run, but rush the passer?
I mean, I don't think anything crazy has to change. I mean, I understand there's a lot of people that are concerned, like Von Miller's mainly a guy who rushes as an outside linebacker and he's in a 2-point stance and he drops into coverage a decent amount and stuff like that. But I mean, Mario Addison was rushing from a 2-point stance a decent amount in this same Bills scheme last year and even the year before that. So it's not like, because his hand isn't in the dirt a lot, it doesn't mean that he's going to be used differently. You can be aligned in the same run gap, but just not have your hand in the dirt, and you can still do similar type of things. But I do agree with the idea of, we have a lot of 3 techs on this roster in theory. Like, we don't know how they're planning on using Settle and Jordan Phillips, but I got to imagine they're going to be used more as pass rushers than run stoppers. And right now it's really just looking like Daquan Jones. So then you kind of look towards the draft and you're like, do we really have to find ourselves still a 1 tech in the draft, wherever that may be in the draft? Or are we really that confident in Eli Anku? Because he did have a pretty nice season last year, kind of sneaky nice season against the run. So that could be something that's in the back pocket for this whole conversation, but I don't see a huge philosophical shift. What I do see is that these additions offer versatility to make any said shift if it needs to be made. And I trust that the coaching staff has all the competence to do that. I don't think it's going to be at the forefront of their mind, but I think if they get into training camp and they see some guys are just a little bit uncomfortable with the way that they're being used, they can tweak it a little bit. But I think to its core, it's going to be a 4-2-5 still.
Yeah, we got Jessica Tennis coming in. A couple other people mentioned this in the comment section too. Thought it was telling that Sean McDermott, who spoke to the media today, he was not willing to say really anything about Starlette. He's like, well, we'll see how it goes. Like, he was very, to me personally, and like reading the tea leaves, I think Star Lotulelei doesn't know what he wants to do. The Cover One guys have heard those sort of rumblings that he might want to retire. So maybe he's going back and forth, doesn't know exactly what he wants to do. The Buffalo Bills are like, we're not going to wait on you, dude. We have to go make the moves because we're in this Super Bowl window here. Randy comes in and says like, hey, he's that post 6-1 cut.
It certainly seems
it. Yeah, but here's the thing: is the Buffalo Bills don't have to. When you make a guy a post 6-1 cut, you don't save that money until post 6-1. So even though you designate them the post 6-1 cut and they hit the market and they're free, you don't actually get that money until after June 1st. So the Buffalo Bills don't have to worry about cutting him and seeing if to give him the respect of going elsewhere, right? It's just like, all right, we'll hold on to him. And if he decides to come to training camp, he comes to training camp. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And if like the caliber of player doesn't show up to training camp that they like, then, they can cut him in training camp. So that should be super interesting there on the Star Lotulelei front. Like, I don't think you're going to see him cut like in the next couple of weeks or even before the draft. Like, I think this is very much something where
he makes thing.
Yeah. I think he makes his decision sometime in, June, like whether he wants to show up to training camp or not. And if he shows up to training camp, the Bills make the decision after seeing him play, whether they want to make him a part of the football team next season. So who knows? I could be wrong, but I just don't see the Buffalo Bills making a decision on him anytime soon. One last thing on Von Miller that I wanted to really touch on is I saw this video clip on social media, and I wanted to share this video clip because I think it speaks to the true importance of what Von Miller is bringing to this football team. It's more than just the 10 sacks that he had last year, the 9.5 sacks. It's more than just the 4 sacks that he had in the playoffs, and the fact that in the biggest games on the biggest stage, like, this dude shows up. What's his name? Sean O'Hara, former center for the New York Giants. He does Good Morning Football stuff. He said that he had the arcade game Big Game Hunter in his basement, and he joked that the high score on the arcade game when he came and got it delivered was Von Miller, because Von Miller is a big game hunter. In the biggest of moments, Von Miller is the guy who makes the play. Yeah. Whether it's a playoff game or the Super Bowl, highlights galore. On the biggest stage, Von Miller makes the biggest plays, and that's why the Buffalo Bills brought him in. You don't want a repeat of 13 seconds. You want a guy who's going to go and they're going to wreak havoc on that quarterback and get him to throw that ball away or make a dumb mistake. But he does bring another element to this locker room, and I want to show this clip real quick.
You don't know how much you did for me, bro. Yeah, we did it together, bro. No, but you don't understand it, bro. God said, bro. When you talk to me, I listen. It's God said. When you talk about being a better leader, I listen. If you say I didn't hear my voice, I listen. God said, it mean the world, bro. God, man. That's all God. I love you forever.
That is Aaron Donald, the best player in football, who had been teammates with Von Miller for no more than half of a season.
Right.
He was acquired at the trade deadline, said, hey, when you told me how to be a better leader, I listened. When you taught me how to be a better football player, I listened. Von Miller is going to bring a different element to that defensive line room. And whether it's Ed Oliver, whether it's AJ Epinesa, whether it's Gregory Rousseau, whether it's Boogie Basham, all of them are going to be better football players for being just on the same field and in the same locker room as a Von Miller. So I think the veteran leadership that Von Miller brings is absolutely just incalculable. Am I correct here?
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone thinks of what he's going to do for them on the field and the technique and, all those pass rushing academies and little clinics that he runs and how he's going to help all these young guys get better on the field. But what doesn't get talked about is how he's going to help them become better professionals, better just people to devote their life to this game and devote their life to this craft. And by that, makes them better mentally and then translates onto the field. So I think a lot of this is that leadership where it's intangible and tangible. We'll see it on the field with the player coaching type stuff, and we'll see it as off the field in the locker room type stuff where he's helping everyone out mentally.
Yeah. And I'm just so excited to see sort of Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver take their games to the next level. So Ed Oliver is almost there, man. Like, he's at the tipping point of becoming one of the sort of better interior defensive linemen in the National Football League, putting himself into that upper echelon. I'm super interested to see him take that next step. I'm super interested in seeing Gregory Rousseau. Like, we see the Bills, like the third year, these Bills players are making all these jumps, right?
Yeah.
I think Gregory Rousseau could make like a second year jump. Like, maybe my expectations are too high, but I'm expecting Gregory Rousseau to come in and just like fuck shit up. Like, I really do think that Gregory Rousseau is going to have an awesome year. And I think Von Miller is going to make him, all the more better being on the other side. I know they're a different type of player, but I think he's really going to benefit from having a Von Miller.
Well, that's the point. Gregory Rousseau, this year in year one, he led the league amongst all edge rushers in run stops. He's been superb in year one.
And the Bills didn't give him that many, and the Bills didn't give him that many pass rush snaps.
No, but now you add Von Miller to the equation, and he gives him that technique stuff. This whole conversation with Rousseau is how great he's been right now, like Chris is saying, how great he's been right now against the run and how sufficient he's been against the pass when he's just winning with athleticism. Imagine once he gets the ear of Von Miller and Von Miller shares all these little nuances to his technique and what he sees in an offensive tackle, the way he's lining up, if his hand's on his knee, if, things like that helps Greg Rousseau get a little edge on the competition and starts getting after the passer in a more technical way, not just an athletic freak kind of way. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Von Miller will help round out Greg Rousseau's game.
We got Pops Mompia coming in saying, when will Epinesa jump? This is going to be one of the more intriguing things to watch this offseason because, if AJ Epinesa, if they have him keep the weight down, because, the dude looks like he's like 255, maybe like 272 my ass. He's not 272. He said, "Oh, I got down into the 240s, but now I'm back up, pushing 265, 270." No, you're not. Like you're like 255, dude. It's gonna be really interesting to see, because if he keeps that weight down, he'll probably get the 35% of those snaps behind Von Miller. He'll be the one
Right.
spelling Von Miller. So he gets to learn his craft from Von Miller. He
Mhm.
gets to play less snaps because he's behind Von Miller. Can he be effective in those snaps? It's going to be really interesting to see if the Bills maybe use some of this. I have no idea how much money the Bills have left. I don't think anyone does.
It's tough to
It's
calculate
just
right now.
it's just so fluid, because you have no idea what they're doing behind the scenes to free up money and all that good stuff. But if they bring in like Melvin Ingram or Jerry Hughes, they already brought in Shaq Lawson today. Some people are like, well, Shaq Lawson was the ad. They're not going to go back and get Jerry Hughes or Melvin Ingram. But if they draft a guy, or if they, sign a guy, that then brings AJ Epinessa's 53-man roster spot next season into question. Maybe they try to trade him, etc. So he's going to be one of the more interesting things to watch this offseason. Can he make the jump? Is he in their plan? All of those different things is going to be really, he's one that you're going to really have to keep an eye on this offseason. We got a super chat here from Gabe, 99 cents. Appreciate it, Gabe. Thank you. If you have a comment, you can throw the comment in. We'll make sure we read that comment for you. One last thing I want to get to in the defensive line room is Jordan Phillips made a comment today. He's like, I wish I never left, and the way that Shaq Lawson has sort of been pretty much on his hands and knees begging the Buffalo Bills to take him back. I made the analogy. He was like John Cusack can say anything, just holding up the radio at One Bills Drive, trying to get them to take him back. I mean, these guys came crawling back.
Yeah, they did.
Nothing wrong with that, but they came crawling back saying they wish they had never left. You have a guy named Ed Oliver who we need to pick up his 5th-year option. Then he becomes a free agent. You have maybe some current concerns that you can't afford to bring a guy like Ed Oliver back, or even on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be hard to pay a guy like Dawson Knox. It's going to be hard to pay a guy like Gabriel Davis when their contract runs out. You now have 2 guys in Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson in your locker room who can pull Ed Oliver, Gabriel Davis, and Dawson Knox aside and say things like, yo, the grass ain't always greener, young buck. Like I understand this is your first and only team, and that you might want to go test free agency and see how the waters work. And they're going to tell you this and they're going to tell you that. It's going to seem all fine and dandy. And you go and you do what you think is best for you. But let me just tell you, the grass ain't always greener. And I wish I would have stayed at Buffalo for this pay cut. I wish I would have stayed at this rate instead of going for that rate, because the money wasn't worth it. You now have like 2 dudes who literally came scrapping and crawling back to Buffalo to spread that message throughout your locker room to the young guys who haven't experienced free agency, who've never experienced another franchise. Like, yo, grass ain't always greener, bro. Like take it from me. Grass ain't always greener. So I might be grasping at straws here.
It's a fair point, though. Like there is some logic to these connection of the dots.
I think you always like to have those guys in your locker room.
Right.
Silas Whittle comes in and says, Boogie, AJ, and group better learn from Vaughn. I can't see all these linemen making the 53. We still need to go after one young, one tech for the future. Yeah, you made that comment earlier, Kendall. I think we still do probably need one in the draft. Probably doesn't have to be early. I mean, if Jordan Davis,
it doesn't need to be early now.
If Jordan Davis is on the board at 25, like, meh, like, okay. But now, like, we had these conversations on the show. Man, Fedarian Mathis makes sense in round 2, but I would feel more comfortable in round 3.
Now you can take that chance and wait.
Now you can wait. Yeah. So you can wait till round 3 for Fedarian Mathis. You have guys like Neil Farrell Jr., John Ridgway late in the draft, Noah Ellis from Idaho. You got some dudes later on the draft that you can go and you can draft and you could bring into camp. And who knows, you could probably sneak some of those guys off into you could wait till 57 to see if Travis Jones falls.
Oh yeah. Now I'm waiting till 57 to see if Travis Jones drops now.
Yeah. So you don't have to sit there and trade up for defensive linemen. You can wait and let one fall to you. Yeah. So that is, I think, the best part of all the different various moves.
The beauty of the Bean MO. It's the beauty of it. You play to your value. You fill all the obvious glaring needs on the roster, and you really just let people fall to you and draft value.
All right. I'm going to put up now the Buffalo Bills depth chart for their skill positions on offense. And I want to take a look at what the Buffalo Bills have going for them on offense right now. At quarterback, they have one guy on the roster, and that is Josh Allen, the franchise quarterback. At running back, they only have 2 guys on the roster, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. fullback Reggie Gilliam, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, along with some youngsters in Marcus Stevenson, Isaiah Hodgins, as well as Taylor Gentry, who's still sticking around, Josh Allen's former college teammate. And then a tight end now. We got a little bit more options here. You got Dawson Knox, you got O.J. Howard, you got Tommy Sweeney, and you got Quentin Morris. We're going to talk about some of the glaring holes. Running back, quarterback, who's left on the free agent market, how do we maybe possibly address this in the draft, etc. The first thing I want to talk a little bit about here is O.J. Howard and his comments. The number one thing that stuck out to me, which I thought was really cool, he said, I did forget about Jay Kumaro. Thank you, Chris Janke. I knew that looked barren. I forgot about Jay Kumaro. Still does look a little rough, even with Jay Kumaro.
Yes.
But we're going to get into that in a second. The number one thing that sticks out to me about O.J. Howard's press conference was like, yeah, I'm used to like world-class facilities. I played at Alabama, but like getting to the National Football League, not every team has a world-class facility because it's the National Football League. Like there's only 32 National Football League teams. You draft guys. Free agents only have so many other choices. Money talks. You don't need to recruit guys in the National Football League. So you don't need to build these world-class meccas. Terry Pagula has made the conscious decision to build a world-class training facility and pay the money to build that world-class training facility, mostly at the behest of Sean McDermott, or not the behest of Sean McDermott, at the encouragement of Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott was like, I need this from you, Terry. I need this from you. And he backed it up and he built that facility. And O.J. Howard's like, yeah, very rarely do you see that in the National Football League. Dallas probably has something like that. Like, not a lot of teams have situations, at least in terms of the Buffalo Bills, that world-class training facility. I thought that really stood out. And I think that O.J. Howard talking about 12 personnel stood out a ton. He's like, hey, we have Dawson Knox. Why'd you come here? Well, look at the new modern NFL. There's a lot of 2 tight end stuff you can do. One of us can be used in the slot, et cetera, et cetera. We lost Cole Beasley today. We had J.D. McKissick go and pull the 180 on us. That stunk. But it looks like maybe the Bills are going more away from maybe that 4 receiver or even that 11 personnel. And they are shifting now to, you're going to see a lot of 12 and you're going to maybe see a lot of 11. I don't know how much of that 4 wide receiver stuff we're going to see. So the Bills need to add to the wide receiver room, but it's not like the Buffalo Bills need to go out and sign a big name free agent and draft a guy. It could just be one of the two. What are your thoughts on maybe what we're going to see schematically from the Buffalo Bills this season?
Well, I don't think O.J. Howard was lying. What I think is I'm sure when, the reps for the Buffalo Bills, I'm sure they were probably massaging the truth a little bit and telling him we're going to be, using a lot of 12 personnel. And this is why you should come here because we're going to use you and Dawson Knox and you guys are going to be lethal. I'm sure that was part of their pitch and I'm sure there is some truth to it, but I'm sure they oversold it a little bit to get him to come to town. That being said, I think there is truth in it. He talked about how with his agent, like the Bills approached his agent and his agent then had to pitch it to him. And he was like, wait, this kind of makes some sense.
Yeah.
Like they're potentially getting rid of Beasley. That gives me an opportunity to get on the field more with Dawson, all of this stuff. These are the kind of things when these dots there's a connection there. And with O.J. Howard speaking to it, it makes sense. I definitely think we're going to see more of a closer split between 11 and 12 personnel. Like you said, lesser of that 10 personnel, but I don't think it's going to go away. Like you said, though, it does depend on what we do the rest of free agency and the rest of the offseason. I still see a possibility where it's sign one, draft one, but it totally depends on who the sign one is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at in terms of the wide receivers, like someone today was like, Allen Robinson's off the board now, but it's like Allen Robinson, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones. I'm like, Jarvis Landry. I'm like, nah, more like maybe Jamison Crowder might be at the high end.
He's the high end of the realistic options.
I was like, I literally was like, I'm not a big fan of AJ Green. Watching Cardinals games this year, I didn't like his effort level. But Zach Pascal is still sitting out there in the market from the Colts. T.Y. Hilton, another guy from the Colts, is sitting out there. Keelan Cole, James Washington, Adam Humphries.
That's the one that I think makes some sense.
A lot of these guys, with the exception of Humphries, have inside-outside flex. So it's sort of like a poor man's Byron Pringle went to Chicago. He's off the board.
Yeah,
he would have been high on my list. It's sort of like I'm looking for like a poor man's Emmanuel Sanders, right? A guy who knows, maybe it will be Emmanuel Sanders if he's willing to take a massive pay cut. It's almost like a guy who's willing to come in, know he's only going to get 35, 40 targets, probably, has inside flex if there's an injury, has outside flex if there's an injury, can do a little bit of both, but just knows that Stephon Diggs is the alpha. Gabriel Davis is going to get his. Dawson Knox, OJ Howard, they're all going to come first. And my guess is we're probably going to add a fifth guy, a running back that's probably going to come first. And we're probably going to draft a guy that's going to come first. And we got a couple of super chats I'm about to get to. I'll tell you what, I know it's not everything. I understand that this is not the end all be all, but so many guys are rising up the draft board, especially edge rushers right now. And every time I do the TDN simulator, Chris Olave and Jahan Dotson are both on the board at 25.
Yep.
Every time. And I'm not saying that that's reality. That might not happen. But even if it's not Chris Olave, if it's someone else, like we're going to get to the board at 25 and there's going to be a receiver on the board at 25 and you're just going to look and you're going to be like, we can't pass. We can't pass. Like they're just too good. We can't pass. Like that is going to probably be the reaction of a lot of people in Bills Mafia. I wonder if Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott would feel the same way on the board at 25. A lot of people agreeing with me, but also at the same time, the issue that comes with it is, then you might have to trade back up to get a corner because Kyler Gordon, Kyrie Elam, Roger McCreary, they could all come off the board. Boom, boom, boom. And you're sitting at 57, like reach for Cam Taylor-Britt. Like that's something that might start to be the issue if you take the wide receiver at 25. What are your thoughts on sort of that dance the Buffalo Bills are going to have to make at pick 25 there?
No, I think that's exactly why you have to go find yourself that stopgap option so you don't have to reach at that wide receiver. That's what we have to do at wide receiver and cornerback, quite frankly. We got to find a guy there. So if the value doesn't seem right in the draft and you feel like you might be reaching 10 spots to get a Dotson and your opportunity cost on that is getting a Kyler Gordon or the Kyrie Elam or a Roger McCreary, then you don't feel so bad about doing it because you have a stopgap option at the other position. So yeah, my initial thoughts are, with the way free agency has played out so far, right now it seems glaringly obvious that the Bills are going to try to go wide receiver or cornerback in the first round, but there's still a lot of time to find those stopgap options, and this would change. It's all very fluid.
There's 5-6 cornerbacks that I like. Obviously, off the top of my head, Sauce is going to be gone. Stingley's probably going to be gone. I'm seeing a lot of Booth dropping to 25.
I'm hoping Booth slips to 25.
He couldn't work out at the combine. He couldn't work out at his pro day because of an injury during training. He's slipping. I've seen a multiple mock drafts with him to 25 of the Bills. That would be the dream. Then it's Trent McDuffie. It's Kyler Gordon. It's Roger McCreary, Kyrie Elam. Like, I think maybe Gordon and Elam most might be considered a reach at 25. I think most people, McCreary and Elam, I think most would consider a reach at 25. I think most people, at least in Bills Mafia, would be okay with Kyler Gordon at 25. But it's like those are the 7 corners that I like, or I think are suitable, like early 25-ish type of corners. There's like 15 wide receivers that I'd be happy taking.
That's the thing. And that's the thing with the wide receiver conversation every single year. It's always a deep class. So that's always the counterpoint to, do we need to take one in round 1? Because there's going to be a dude that can contribute in day 1 when you're drafting him in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yeah. Finally getting to some super chats here. I apologize. Your boy Lettuce said, with Tyrod Taylor and Kyle Allen gone, there isn't anything in free agency I'm giving $3 million to. Might as well see what we can get in the 6th, make our coaches work. Looking at this list of quarterbacks who are available, Jameis Winston, I think, is waiting, and Marcus Mariota are waiting to see where Deshaun goes, where Baker goes, where Jimmy G goes. They're waiting to see where all the cards fall. I don't even like Jameis as a backup because I just don't think he would consider a place like Buffalo. I think Jameis is more of a guy who's going to try to go find a place with even a fringe starting quarterback that he can usurp. To me, Marcus Mariota is sort of the number one, sort of an athletic guy who can move around, etc. But even he might be out of range. Andy Dalton is available. Jacoby Brissett is, I think, surprisingly still available. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, it's down to 5 guys now. Winston, Mariota, Dalton, Brissett, Fitzpatrick. After that, you're looking at Blaine Gabbert, Geno Smith, Trevor Siemian, Matt Barkley, Mike Glennon, and Joshua Dobbs. So it's not pretty if you were the Buffalo. I'm surprised it's taken the Buffalo Bills this long to pull the trigger. I think a lot of it has to do with Deshaun Watson. Maybe if Deshaun Watson had made his way to Carolina, maybe Sam Darnold's the backup in Buffalo, but it's looking like that's not going to happen. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the backup quarterback situation here?
I mean, I don't have a lot of thoughts on it because, I mean, whoever we get at this point, I'm not expecting a lot from them. Obviously, I'm hoping they can be that guy that gives us a 500, 50-50 win percentage type of thing. But I'm not expecting much. This whole time I was expecting them to wait out the quarterback carousel, see who loses musical chairs, and just take that guy. Although that isn't the sexiest option.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems like the way that they're going to go, especially after the Von Miller signing. Like, they got to deal with so much money stuff. I don't know if they could even afford, like you were saying, a Marcus Mariota. And even if they can, they got to wait till they can kick all the cans down the road with Dawkins, White, Milano, Hyde, Diggs. They got to make sure they do all of that before they can even get the signing for the backup quarterback. Yeah. So yeah, I think they're going to wait it out. Whoever it is, great. I don't think we're going to be all that excited about who it is, but we need to find someone.
I mean, we'll be excited if
fine with it being. I'd be fine if it's Andy Dalton at this point.
Yeah.
I just want someone.
I wanted a bigger arm guy, but I mean, of all the choices, like Jacoby Brissett is the one that sticks out the most.
I think Jacoby Brissett is the one I like the most out of all of those.
He was willing to. I mean, he went to a place where Tua was. At least he thought Tua. I mean, you had to assume Tua was the entrenched starter there. Right. Maybe he was a little. Maybe he heard some Brian Flores remarks and was just like, Eric Farrell comes in and says the Rams just signed Allen Robinson, and the report came out like, hey Odell, we still have money for you too. Don't worry. It's crazy to me, but they have lost a ton of guys. Mr. Bean, please work a trade for Robert Woods. Let's get that dog back on the Bills. I mean,
that'd be awesome.
What was crazy to me was after the Super Bowl, how many players went out of their way, like in the moments after the Super Bowl, be like, Robert Woods had so much to do with this, even though he wasn't on the field and he had been out since midseason. Like, it wasn't like a day later or a week later at the parade. They're like, hey, this Robert Woods guy. It was like literally in the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the Super Bowl. There were multiple players that went out of their way to make the comment like he was a part of this. He was an integral part of this Super Bowl run. Just because he wasn't on the field doesn't make him not a part of this. Robert Woods would be an awesome get. If you could trade for him, I don't see the Rams trading for him, especially now with the questions surrounding Odell and all that stuff. I think Robert Woods is probably pretty safe because he's more than likely ready to be back by the start of training camp. But if you like Robert Woods, I have a player in the draft from Boise State named Khalil Shakir who reminds me an awful lot of Robert Woods, and I would be very similar. I would be quite smitten if the Bills took him in the third round of the draft. All right. I'm going to put up the offensive line here. And this makes myself a little sad. Not a lot of names here. Left to right now, if the season were to start today, which it's definitely not, you'd have Deion Dawkins, Roger Saffold, Mitch Morse, Cody Ford, and Spencer Brown. And the depth along the offensive line, you have your swing tackle and Tommy Doyle, aka tight end number 2, tight end number 3 now. And my favorite comment the other day was, who's Jacob Capra? Somebody asked that in the comments section the other day. He's currently your backup right guard. Ryan Bates has been tendered at the lowest free agent tender. He is currently in Minnesota meeting with the Vikings. So there's some questions surrounding his future. Our guy, Gregory Tom said, is pretty confident that even if Minnesota offers him, we'll match it. And Ryan Bates will be back with the Buffalo Bills. So I apparently missed a super chat. I'm going to go back and get that in a second. But what are your thoughts on the offensive line here? Like, do we need to address this with some more free agent signings? Or is this mostly like something we're going to do and go into the draft?
I think two things. I think I left out interior offensive line as one of those options right now that we're looking at as a round 1 selection. I think it is wide receiver, cornerback, and interior offensive lineman. Just the way the roster is right now. Obviously, a lot of things change. And on that note, I think we need to find a stopgap vet option. Like we saw Austin Blythe just get signed. Someone at that level where it's like they can come in, they can show some versatility to be backup center.
AC Treader.
I wonder how much that would cost though. Yeah. Because he's been good for that Browns O line.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to find something at that position, just depth wise, because otherwise we got to find some answer in the draft.
And it's not pretty in free agency either. So. By chance comes in and says, look at the Bengals, though. Their success was based on how stacked their wide receiver room. Rams followed that formula too. We knew they took guy. I don't disagree with you. Like,
this was probably in response to what I was talking about with the waiting on wide receiver thing.
And I still think like going out and signing Keelan Cole in free agency and drafting a guy in the second round, like Calvin Austin or Sky Moore or whatever.
Right.
I still think you're loaded up enough at wide receiver, especially with Josh Allen, your quarterback, and what you already have in the room to be successful. Because like, it's cool to go chase the Chris Olaves, and it's cool to go chase the Jahad Dodsons in round 1 and add that alpha. Or it's cool to go out and maybe sign one of the more upper tier free agents who are left, like chase the Julio Jones or whatever. But we just saw how shallow that offensive line is. Like, you might want to consider Zion Johnson at 25.
Right.
I had this conversation with Dave. You missed it. The next 2 picks after the Bills are Tampa Bay and Tennessee. They're both. I know Tampa Bay just traded for Shaq Mason, but they lost Alex Kappa and they lost. I'm blanking on the guy who retired, Ali Marpet. Like, Tennessee lost Roger Saffold. Like, these guys lost dudes on the interior of their offensive line. If the Bills were in the interior offensive lineman round 1 market, and Zion Johnson or Tyler Linderbaum makes it to 25, you're going to pull the trigger, because you can't like trade back a couple of spots. They're going to be gone in the next 2 spots probably concurrently. So it's going to be super interesting to see where they go there. But like, it's just so shallow. And I'm looking at the names. Andrew Norwell just signed somewhere today. I believe he signed in Washington. I'm like updating my spreadsheet. When the guys aren't, it's Schefter and Rappaport. They mentioned the big names, and man, some of these other names, I have to scour Twitter to find them. But, you know, to my knowledge, Bradley Bozeman's too much money. Eric Flowers, probably too much money. Levante Duvernay Tardif.
He retired, no?
No, he played for the Jets last year.
I could have sworn he like just retired.
Oh, again, maybe I missed it. But JC Treader, he's got some flex. Trey Turner is guard only. Matt Paradis is center only. Quentin Spain is guard only, and also no thanks.
Ike Bucker's still out there.
True, but can he play week 1?
That's a good point. That's a valid point.
Right. I would love Ike Bucker back. I assume Ike Bucker's coming back, but I also assume he's going to be pupped, and he's going to be one of those guys that we have as a midseason option.
Does Cromer want to get John Miller back?
I don't know. Will Hernandez, Ethan Pochich from Seattle's got some center guard flex. Chris Reed from the Colts has got some center guard flex. Again, Will Hernandez, guard only, to my knowledge. I don't know if he's played much center. Max Garcia, kind of like, he had some good games and some bad games for the Cardinals last year.
He bothered me with the Cardinals. He was like the issue of their snapping problems.
Yeah, he couldn't snap. So even though he on paper has guard center flex, he's not a good center.
He's a guard, and he's not all that great at that either.
Michael Schofield sticks out, but he's guard only. Ode Abuche sticks out, but he's guard only. There's Dan Feeney. There's Alex Lewis. Nick Martin is visiting, I think, with like the Ravens or something. BJ Finney. Billy Price, like, it's not pretty. Agency.
But we got to find someone. Got to pick one.
I'm calling my shot. I think Jamil Douglas makes his way back onto the Buffalo Bills. It won't be soon, but I think Jamil Douglas is back on the roster by training camp. And that's where I'm trying to get at with, like, and Greg laid out an argument. Austin Reeder is available. I like Austin Reeder. That's a good one. It's a really good one. Austin Reeder. I like Austin Reeder. You know, Greg laid out and I told Greg this. I'm like, everything you're saying is 100% plausible with why the Buffalo Bills didn't try harder to extend. Yeah, I know who Austin Reeder is. I just forgot to put him on my spreadsheet. He played for Miami last year, solid center. He's got a history in the league. So Austin Reeder is a solid option as well. But he's one of like 3 options. There's not a lot of options. Please don't mention Bobby Hart's name on this podcast again. But, you know, just Greg Thompson laid out all the reasons why you don't tender Ryan Bates at the highest tender or the second round tender. You save $1.5 million. Does he want to sign long-term because he sees what the market is? Other GMs don't poach RFAs. It's like an unwritten rule. All these different things makes total sense to me. I still don't care. Like, and I told Greg this, I'm like, everything you're saying, like, I understand. I just don't care. Like, if I were the Buffalo Bills, I would have second round tendered Rick Bates because I just see the garbage that's on the market. And who knows, maybe Darrell Williams comes back here for pennies and he's our starting right guard again next year. But like, I just don't know. And that's why I personally would have second round tendered Ryan Bates. I would have spent the extra $1.5 million and I would have tried working on a longer term deal with him just because, like, it's just, I know we haven't lost him yet, or we probably won't lose him, but just the thought of it possibly happening,
right,
giving it a chance to happen, I'm just not a fan of. So it's slim pickings out there. Austin Reeder, I think, is now that people have mentioned it, I forgot to put on my spreadsheet here. I'm really upset with myself. He's probably my number one. Michael Schofield's probably my number two. And then it's like Trey Turner, Ethan Pochich, Chris Reed, like it's Odea Boucher.
I'm curious
Dan
how much
Toon.
Billy Turner would be.
Great. Yeah, that's tackle guard flex though, right? Like,
yeah, it is, but he played guard for the Packers, right? Mostly.
Yeah, he played right tackle all of last season. I believe his last 2 seasons.
I did not know.
Yeah, the last 2 seasons he was right tackle. Randy Hartman comes in, Lacita Smith. Mm-hmm. A lot of dots are being connected to Lacita Smith.
Yeah.
Our guy Dean Kindig from Bill's Mafia blog talks all the time about, or Buffalo fan base. I always do that. Buffalo fan base mentions how the Bills have been linked to Virginia Tech. Our guy here, Russ Brown, talked to Lacita Smith at the Senior Bowl, and Lacita Smith said, man, the Buffalo Bills opened up their notebook and it was full under my name. Like they had done their research on me and it wasn't them trying to catch up. They knew everything about me. Mm-hmm. So it's clear the Buffalo Bills have an interest in Lacita Smith. Who knows though, right? Like I would think that I don't know if he tanked the stock at the combine. I don't think he was ever really that great of a prospect. I think he was always a 4th or a 5th round guy. I think he finally came back down to earth at the combine. He's got short arms, which is something I always thought was a little weird and would scare the Bills away. But apparently, according to most of the evidence, it's not. So
it's also less concerning at guard than it is at tackle.
Yeah, I'll just say this like flat out. Like we need to draft 2 interior offensive linemen. 2. Like
the way it stands right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if we sign a guy, like even if
what if we get Bates back and sign a guy?
If we get Bates back and sign Austin Reeder, I still think we got to draft 2. Like, I just want that depth there. Unless we sign Austin Reeder, sign Jameel Douglas, and, get Ryan Bates back. Like, I mean, I'm talking first 4 rounds, take a guy, and then take a guy in the 6th or the 7th round, like a body. Right? Yeah. Like that's what I'm talking about. So, it's just going to be super interesting. But, like, I mean, this is just a scary graphic right now. Brandon Beane said the number 1 priority for the Buffalo Bills heading into this offseason was to protect Josh Allen. And the only thing he's done is cut a bunch of players, signed Roger Saffold, and opened up Ryan Bates to the potential of being poached. Like, there's 7 dudes on the roster right now in the offensive line. I understand we are 2 days in to the official free agency period. That's still that's still a scary graphic to look at. And as the hours dwindle, the names dwindle. So it's and you know me, like, and you know us, like we have these conversations all the time about guys we want to draft. So it should be interesting. Silas Whittle put up a nice list here. Ed Ingram, Marquise Hayes, Schaefer, Cole Strange, Fortner. The last 2 are my 2 favorites. My 3 favorites for the Bills are Cam Jurgens, nickname is Beef Jerky, Cole Strange, and Luke Fortner. Those are my 3 favorite for the Buffalo Bills. But it should be interesting. Kenyon Green, I think, is moving into the 2nd round at this point. His testing numbers weren't so great. So I'll tell you what, man, it's talk me off the ledge. Just make me feel a little bit better. I'm a worrier. Like,
I know. I think you're emotionally attached to Rick Bates and how much he did for this team and all of that. And the fear of losing him is a lot. But there is not a lot of depth behind the starters right now. And that is very fair concern.
But so if people who follow me on Twitter or follow the Bills guys handle understand this, like, I'm just an impatient motherfucker. Like, I don't like seeing those holes on the depth chart. I want them filled now. Like, I could never be an NFL general manager because I don't have that emotional control that Brandon Beane has. Like, I don't have it. I would be the guy offering everybody at 12:01, like, sign the contract now, sign it now. Like, that's who I would be. I don't have the patience to wait dudes out. Like, I would not be good at negotiating a contract because I look at this and I shit my pants. Like,
it's scary. Like, you have every reason to be concerned. Like, it is scary that there's literally no depth behind it. But to be fair,
the starters are fine.
Like Beane held up his end of the bargain, saying it is most important in those starters. The 5, if Bates comes back, it does look good. It is just scary what's behind them right now, which is literally a wooden bench.
We can clip this and we can just sit back and laugh at it in like a month and a half when I've completely overreacted.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like I overreact to a ton of things, but I also usually put a disclaimer that I'm overreacting in front of it. So that'll be super interesting. Some other interesting things, looking at, we already talked about the defensive line. So the Bills linebacking core, this is super interesting. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills run a lot of base nickel. So obviously my depth chart here looks a little bit different. It's Tremaine Edmonds. It's Matt Milano. Those are your two starters. Behind that, it's Tyrell Dodson. It's Andre Smith. It's Joe Giles-Harris. It's Tyler Matakevich, who's mostly a special teamer. Popular sentiment is that the Bills have enough there to get by if we need to. Another popular take would be, all right, let's head into the draft and let's draft a guy to hedge your bets against Tremaine Edmonds. The draft class is loaded at linebacker.
Yeah,
absolutely
it is.
loaded. Randy retweeted something today. The Bills have been the Bills interviewed Chad Muma. They got pretty in-depth with a guy like Chad Muma. Ton of linebackers in the draft. My thought there is like wait till the 4th round and see which one drops and just get the value at round 4. Troy Anderson's another guy they talked to. But then the report came out from Ryan Talbot today that they are in preliminary talks and sort of looking into a guy like Alex Singletary. Again, did not get the RFA tender from the Eagles, started for them, put up some pretty decent box score number for the Eagles. Where do you think the Buffalo Bills go at linebacker? To me, I'm like, I don't want a free agent linebacker. I just want to maybe draft a guy in the 4th or the 5th round and, bring a couple of UDFAs in and be done with it. What are your thoughts about the linebacker position?
I'm with you. I'm in the boat where I'd like them to do the wait and see thing, see who falls to your pick in round 4, round 5 kind of thing, and take that guy to hedge your bets against Edmonds. But I also don't hate the idea of finding a vet minimum free agent option. And I think, by the way, it's Singleton, it's not another Singletary. But I think Singleton will be close to vet minimum. I don't know how close it actually will be. Like, he has good numbers because he's been forced to start for the Eagles, but the Eagles are like real bad at the linebacker position.
Preston Brown numbers.
It is kind of like that. If anyone watched the combine, what's his name? The Eagles podcaster that came on the air with DJ and Rich Eisen, and he was like screaming at Howie to
that kid's name. I was like, draft a linebacker, Howie.
It's Gio. But that's the point. Like, he's upset because he's been watching Alex Singleton. But Alex Singleton has been doing stuff for them. He's been leading them in tackles, and he's been doing a decent job of it. But I don't know if he's really like starter material. He's probably more like replacement level material. And he's definitely a good special teams type of player, plays with good energy. And when I saw that, I started thinking, does this mean they're trying to move on for Matakevich and find an option that can back up Edmonds, but also play special teams kind of thing, and then get cheaper at that spot? That was my initial thought with the Singleton news, but I don't know. I was caught off guard by it. Pretty much anything at the linebacker position at this point, I'm going to be caught off guard by, because it's all very fluid right now, especially with the money stuff. Because I don't know where Edmonds stands right now with the money issue.
Yeah, it's like I said, you want to think that the Bills would hedge their bets, but like I just don't see anyone in free agency signing a multi-year deal, right? So you're not hedging your bets. If you got, I mean, there are a ton of names when I scroll through here, and again, this could be a little out of date. Bobby Wagner, Kazir White, Troy Reeder, Quan Alexander, Joe Schobert, Janny Tavathan, Alex Singleton, Jawan Bentley, Anthony Hitchens, Dante Hightower, Kyle Vanoy, Jared Davis, Jayon Brown, Leighton Vander Esch, Rashad Evans, Nick Kwiatkowski, Jermaine Carter, Camus Grugier-Hill, Alec Ogletree, Nick Vigil, Kenny Young, Jamie Collins. I mean, there's so many names that are still sitting out there. Like, you just wait until a week before training camp, there'll still be one of those guys sitting out there who can sign a minimum deal. So I understand it's preliminary interest in a guy like Singleton, but just super, super interesting that he's the name that they sort of zeroed in on, and they're zeroing in on him now. Like, I would think, like, and again, that clip from Ian Rappaport that came out today, like, the Bills like to move in secret. They don't like people to know what they're doing. If you haven't seen that clip, head over to the Air Raid Hour account. I shared it today. I actually have it in the queue. I'm going to play it up a little bit later in the show, but like, the Bills move in secret. So cornerback could be the next move. Quarterback 2 could be the next move. Another offensive lineman could be the next move. But The report came out from Ryan Talbot today that they have preliminary interest in a guy like Alex Singleton. So probably tells you they probably don't expect him to go anywhere anytime soon, at least leave the market. So, I mean, I'm team draft the guy. And like I said, my philosophy is I don't want to use a first round pick on him or a second round pick on him or a third round pick on him. But I would love to. I mean, there are 12 linebackers in this draft that I would consider taking in the first 3 rounds. One of them's got to drop to the 4th round.
Right. You'd think.
So even if it means trading up in the 4th round, like using one of your 6 to move up in the 4th round and go snag a linebacker, had your bets. You have a high upside guy. He can fill that AJ Klein role early. That's where I would move in the draft. I could pull up my spreadsheet and list 15 guys right now. I'm not going to do it. We have plenty of off-season time to get to that, but it should be super interesting. And then that leads us now to the secondary, where obviously I think the most glaring hole in this football team right now is CB2. Mm-hmm. You look at the secondary right now, the starters on paper look fine outside of CB2. And even that looks okay. Like it's Trey White, who's coming off the ACL. You don't know if he's gonna be ready week 1. It's Dane Jackson on the corner on the boundaries. It's Teron Johnson at nickel. It's Micah Hyde and it's Jordan Poyer. But the depth is concerning. You have DeMar Hamlin behind Micah Hyde. You have Jaquan Johnson and Josh Thomas behind Jordan Poyer. That's not so much of a concern. If the Bills need to continue putting that off, they can probably continue to put that off because Hyde and Poyer both play positions that age well, and they could probably get 2-3 more years out of those guys. Teron Johnson's got Saran Neal and Cam Lewis behind him. That's solid. It's the boundary corner, right? It's after Trey White, after Dane Jackson, it's Elijah Griffin. It's Nick McLeod. It's Cam Lewis moving to the boundary. It's Tim Harris. It's a concerning amount of depth. This is a sign 1, draft 1 type of position here for the Buffalo Bills. Are we going to see the Buffalo Bills sign a cornerback this week, or are we going to have to wait and wait and wait?
I hope not. I don't know if I can handle a week of not knowing who's going to start opposite Dane Jackson in week 1. I'm not putting bets down that Trey White's coming out there with the team in full pads on week 1. I'm expecting him to miss at least the first month of games, which obviously sucks. But I think with everything we know about this coaching staff and how well they've done grooming talent at that position, I have a lot of faith that whoever they sign and whoever they draft will be adequate in their job to do their 111th, like Dane Jackson was when he had to come in a pinch. So I'm confident in Dane Jackson to hold down CB2 or at the very least compete for CB2, but I don't like going into week 1 knowing he's CB1.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So Billy Williams comes in and says Joe Hayden. And 3-4 days ago, I would have said, hell no. Like, I don't want Joe Hayden. To me, he's bottom of the barrel. Him and Patrick Peterson would be in that, like, sort of, to me, like, worst case scenario, signing a guy. But now that we have filled all these other holes, well, if we sign Joe Hayden and we draft a guy in the first 2 rounds,
it's not the worst thing in the world.
It's not the worst thing in the world because I know that the Buffalo Bills have the ability to draft a corner 2 in the first 3 rounds. So now I'm a little bit more open to a guy like Joe Hayden or a guy like Patrick Peterson. Looking over this list of free agents, Stephon Gilmore is still available. All the reports are coming out is he wants to go to the West Coast, and he's talking to a number of West Coast teams. So I don't know the ability for the Buffalo Bills unless he pulls a complete 180 to go after a guy like Stephon Gilmore. But then you have Rasul Douglas, you have Dante Jackson, you have Steven Nelson, you have AJ Bouye. Those are like the 4 guys that I think are the best case scenarios. Then you have a guy like Mackenzie Alexander, who's got some tools, some intangibles that the Bills might be intrigued
flex,
by.
Right?
I believe Mackenzie Alexander could play in the nickel as well. You have Xavier Rhodes. You have Bryce Callahan, who I know Anthony Prohaska is very
he's still
fond of.
For him.
This is a name that I'm going to throw out there, but I don't really know. Richard Sherman is still technically out there. Joe Hayden, Patrick Peterson, Robert Alford, Fabian Moreau, Jason Verrett. We're getting to the bottom of the barrel now. Desmond Trufant, Kyle Fuller. Those are some of the names. Mike Hughes, I think, is where we get to the bottom, and I'm done talking. But there's still a number of names that could come in here and could be realistic CB2s for this football team. Is there anyone who sticks out to you like a sore thumb as like the guy that you want? To me, it's Dante Jackson.
I mean, yeah, Dante Jackson is like the last guy left that I really, really want, but I don't think we have the money for him at this point. I don't know who we have the money for. We might have the money for anyone at this point. Unfortunately, Casey Hayward, I see it in the chat. Casey Hayward was just signed today, I believe, by the Falcons. The thing with Rasul Douglas is he would probably be top of my list, but I heard he and the Packers have mutual interest in him returning. So I'm kind of just like relieving myself of that false hope thing.
Rasul is just going to go there now that they have money that they don't have to give to
Exactly. So I want Rasul Douglas. I think that of all the guys left is my ideal option, but I don't want to give myself false hope with the news that he's probably going to go back. I think the guys that I'm zeroing in on are Dante Jackson, despite, the money thing. The two more realistic guys are probably AJ Boye and Xavier Rhodes. I know people are going to laugh at me for saying Xavier Rhodes because he's, washed up and all that stuff. But guys like that can thrive for an extra year or two in a zone type of defense where
we only need
they're
games.
not exactly. He just needs to come in and do his 111 for half the season. and exactly, he's going to be that mentor type of guy in the practice field, in the locker room, all that type of stuff to the guy that we do draft in the early rounds, hopefully. So that's why I would like an AJ Boye or a Xavier Rhodes. I think they would be a good stopgap option to compete for CB2 once Trey White comes back and be a good guy to hold down the other side of the field with Dane Jackson for the first half of the season.
We got Eric Farrell coming to the super chat. He says, could you guys get specific on why Hamlin and Johnson are not perfectly fine backup safeties? They are perfectly fine backup safeties. Like, they play special teams. They're developmental guys. I think poor Jaquan Johnson, just never has had a chance to be on the field. Just been buried in that sort of special teams reserve role for his entire rookie contract. He
played well in garbage time this year. He got a lot of garbage time this year.
Yeah. And Damar Hamlin, the Bills are very high on Damar Hamlin. We on this show are very high. It's not that we're not high on these guys, but they were 6th and 7th round draft picks for reasons, right? And Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are both 30 plus years old. If Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer had to miss a game or two and Damar Hamlin had to step up, we'd be like, all right, cool. We have enough around them to mask it. It'll be fine. If one of them, knock on wood, has a Trey White type of injury and has to miss the season, okay, cool. We could probably mask Damar Hamlin as our starting free safety, especially now with all the dogs that we have up front. We could probably make it work. But
it's still a bit concerning.
Of replacing Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer someday, that's where you start to go they're limited athletes. They're not as good athletes as some other people. You look at the middle rounds of the draft, guys like Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati, who you could draft to play corner and maybe slot in at safety. You see a guy like JT Woods, who plays a really good center field there for Baylor, playing that Dave Aranda defense. Sean McDermott and Dave Aranda have a relationship. You sort of start peeking at some of those safeties in the draft and they interest you. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with bringing in someone to compete with those guys. I have no interest in signing a free agent safety. I just saw the money that guys like Malik Hooker got, $4 million for $8 million over 2 years. You're not signing any free agent to term to stay here long enough to replace Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde. You're bringing in competition. It just depends on how high you're drafting it. I wouldn't go any earlier than the 4th round.
I don't even know if I'd go any earlier than the 5th round for a safety. At this point, safeties. I mean, every year when I get through the draft process, I'm like, wow, I really like a lot of safeties. But I think at this point, you got to develop those 3 guys, Josh Thomas, Damar Hamlin, and Jaquan Johnson. Should Jaquan Johnson leave after this year, I believe this is his last year of his rookie contract, then we figure it out next year in the draft and we find a way to replace him that way. I don't think it's a glaring need, but like you say, and like Brandon Bean says, you got to have an eye towards now and the future. Yeah. And the future, we have to have some sort of plan to replace those guys. Yeah, Alontae Taylor or Cam Taylor.
Yeah, they both have safety flex.
Yeah, an interesting idea to compete for cornerback this year and have that chance to move back to
Cam Taylor Britt in the 3rd round, Alontae Taylor in the 4th round. You're just adding a whole bunch of chess pieces to that secondary.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
I just got an idea for my next mock draft, I think.
Oh boy.
And Chris Dinky comes in and says, I sneaky like Josh Thomas as well.
I think a lot of people do.
I think he could usurp Jaquan Johnson this year. I
think so too.
I think there's just because I don't know. I have to go double check, but I feel like the Buffalo Bills might feel like they could probably hold on to Josh Thomas longer than Jaquan Johnson. Jaquan Johnson's coming into that last year of the contract. Like you said, he's played well in garbage time. How much longer is he willing to wait behind guys like Jordan Poyer? He might go the Dean Marlowe route and be like, I'm done. I want to go spread my wings. So the Bills might want to cut bait a year early, even though like he might be a little bit better of a player because like they think they have a better chance of holding on to Josh Thomas longer term, or they could just keep Josh Thomas on the practice squad again.
I think the one thing is Jaquan Johnson's probably making the roster year over year because he's better at special teams. And we know how much the team values that. So that's another little wrinkle to the safety position. If you're a backup, you have to be good at special teams.
And Jessica Tennis comes in and says Hyde was a 5th rounder and Boyer was a 7th rounder. Just saying, 100%. Like we're talking about the guys I just mentioned. Kobe Bryant is probably like a 4th rounder. And JT Woods is probably a 4th or a 5th rounder. Cam Taylor-Britt, Alontae Taylor are 3rd, 4th rounders. Like I'm not saying like I love Jalen Petrie. My man crush on Jalen Petrie knows no bounds. I also love Daxton Hill. Like
it's just too rich for someone that's going to be sitting behind Poyer and Hyde.
Yeah, it's too rich for someone who's sitting behind a point by. My biggest fear is the Buffalo Bills are like, no, we need to have the replacement in place. They filled all these holes, and we're going to take Jalen Petrie. Like, so I'll be so torn if we take Jalen Petrie or Daxton Hill. I will be so fun.
I like both players too, but it doesn't make a ton of sense in terms of like what you're getting in a return on investment in year one for someone like that.
Speaking of that leads us now to the final part of the depth chart, the specialists. We have our kicker in place, Tyler Bass. We have our punter not in place. Reworked his contract, nothing guaranteed, but Matt Hawk will be with the Buffalo Bills, probably at least through training camp. But the Bills are definitely going to bring in some competition. Johnny Hekker is sitting out there. Riley Dixon is sitting out there. Both those guys have been released from the Giants and the Rams. I don't think the Bills are going to go the free agent route, though. And then Reed Ferguson is also pretty entrenched as our long snapper punter. We got to draft. Like every mock draft I do, I carve out a 6th or a 7th round pick for a punter. Go get your Tyler Bass of punters. Pick one and draft them, correct?
Yeah, no, every single time. I don't really care when it is, as long as it's I guess I'll say 5th round or later, because you got to leave the window open for punt god. So I guess 5th round or later is kind of my rule of thumb. Ideally, I personally, as great as Matt Araiza is, I don't want to take him in the 5th round. I think we could get a player that is just a little bit more valuable in that round. Someone that could have an impact instantly on special teams, has future impact, whatever it may be. But I think we'll be able to get a guy that's close enough to that kind of level of punter in the 6th round or later. There's options. We've talked about them. You've definitely talked about them in past shows. There are punters to be had in this draft, and we need to find one to compete with Matt Hawk.
Yeah. Great question from Johnny Blaze. Hey, can we talk about something that no one is talking about? Who the hell is going to return punts next year? I've laid out a number of options. Like I look at the roster right now. Isaiah McKenzie, Marquez Stevenson redemption tour is about where we're at right now. I think maybe Tanner Gentry has returned some kicks, punts in his career. I have to double check.
That's the way he can make the team.
And then it's like Micah Hyde. Like that's it. Like, so the Bills are still going to need to make an addition on that front. I look in free agency, some names that I like. Chester Rogers is available. Adam Humphries is a guy who's returned kicks and punts in his career. Hasn't done so lately. My favorites, Gunnar Olszewski from the Patriots was not tendered. He is somebody that I would really consider if I was the Buffalo Bills. You also have, looking up their name, Alex Erickson is another bottom of the barrel sort of option. Former Bengal, former Texan. He's returned a bunch of punts in his career. I'm more concerned about punt return than kick returner, by the way. Richie James from the San Francisco 49ers is a guy who, coming off of a surgery, he's got a little bit of an upside as a receiver. He's got some return ability. Marquise Goodwin, I think, is no better than a McKenzie but DeAndre Carter from Washington Commanders. You know me, I love myself some Commanders. The rumor has it that he's looking for some money because he's a pretty decent return man. But DeAndre Carter. So free agency, sort of talking about my butt here because I'm looking at the spreadsheet and they're all blended into the wide receiver core. DeAndre Carter, Chester Rogers, Gunnar Olszewski, Richie James, and Alex Erickson are 5 options in free agency. In the draft, you have cornerbacks like Marcus Jones and Jack Jones, and wide receiver like Britton Covey is someone who really intrigues me in the 6th or the 7th round. A guy who literally was a returner at the University of Utah for like 3 or 4 years. he's went on that Mormon mission. He's like 25 years old. He's literally, he's going to be one job. At 5'10", 180 pounds. His only job is to return kicks and punts for you. So a bunch of different options. Trusted Ebner from Baylor too, but the Bills need to address it for sure. For sure need to address it. If I'd be shocked if they didn't. I would be shocked if it was McKenzie versus Stevenson part 2.
Yeah, I'd be shocked, especially everything we saw in the postseason and how they went to Micah Hyde in that moment. I'd be shocked if they feel comfortable going into the season with those two guys duking it out for that job. Ideally, they find someone a la Brandon Powell of last year, some sort of free agent that can come in and ease your mind if you're Brandon Beane too. We don't need to go and draft a guy with kick, punt, return, flex. We have someone on the roster to, at the very least, compete and push Isaiah McKenzie or Marquez Stevenson to be better versions of themselves as kick and punt returners, something of that nature. So I'd prefer some sort of stopgap option in that way to compete with them. So you're not forced into drafting someone like a Velus Jones or a Bo Melton or something like that.
Tariq Cohen failed his physical and was cut by the Bears. That's something to look into. Jalen Richard, I had to check to see if he's ever returned punts.
I was literally just about to do that with Jalen Richard because that's someone I have my eyes on as a J.D. McKissic replacement.
I've never liked this player, but Ty Montgomery is another guy. Man. Duke Johnson, I don't think he's ever returned punts.
Yeah, Jalen Richard has definitely a history of returning kicks and punts.
So Jalen Richard,
68 punt returns in his career and 55 kick returns.
There we go.
His average for punts is, hold on here.
I don't care as long as he catches it.
I mean, that's a good point. But his average is 7.1 for punts, which is actually pretty good. And then his kick is 20.9, which is all right.
Oh, did Ty Montgomery sign? This is what I'm talking about. People signing, and I just don't see it. Signed by the Pats. So there we go. I don't know what insider. I've been following like 7 insiders. Who the hell tweeted that one? I missed that one. So thank you by chance, and thank you Chris Janke for that one.
It's interesting that they signed Ty Montgomery after they re-signed James White. It's kind of
and redundant. Not Brandon. Joe Marino is like super into Brandon Bolden. He's been talking about him on the podcast a little bit. That's an interesting guy. He's obviously not a punt and kick returner, and he's not a gunner either. But Brandon Bolden's a 4-phase special teamer who, despite the fact that he does not look very athletic on the football field, always seems to be making plays.
He is always making plays. Tywan Jones replacement.
Does he gun though?
Like, I don't know if he guns, but at least he's like replacing his spot. Like
as
one of the 11 spots.
You don't want him to be like one of your top 3 running backs, but you're like okay with him.
Exactly. He's the reason that like a Zach Moss would be a healthy scratch on Sunday, something like that. We need that running back, so we know one of those 3 is going to be a healthy scratch because as we see it right now, I mean Singletary and Moss, they're not playing special teams.
All right, so last thing I wanted to talk about before we head out here is the draft. I want to maybe shift a little bit of focus back to the draft. And I want to throw a take by you, and I want to hear your thoughts on this take. This is the draft take that I have. First 4 rounds of the draft, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. To me, I believe with signing J.D. McKissic, but then watching him walk, between addressing a lot of positions and letting Cole Beasley walk, obviously free agency can change over the next couple of days, our lack of depth along the interior of the offensive line, and our lack of depth at CB2. I think wide receiver, running back, offensive line, cornerback will be our first 4 picks in the draft. I can't tell you the order. I think that'll come down to best player available. But what are your thoughts? Cornerback, wide receiver, running back, offensive line, 1, 2, 3, 4. Our first 4 picks will be of those 4 positions.
Not in order, but those 4 positions.
But those will be the first 4. The only position I can think that would throw a wrench into it is linebacker.
I think the only position that would throw a wrench into it is defensive tackle if a 1 tech falls to us.
Okay. Maybe quarterback if we don't sign a quarterback. 3rd round, Carson Strong.
Hell no. That's like the polar opposite of Josh Allen. He can't move.
I was making a joke. Jeez.
But what if people don't know it? Like, I didn't pick up on the sarcasm.
But yeah, I don't know. What, like, am I being too...
No.
Too need specific? Like, am I still looking like too much at needs and not best player available? Or
I think you are, but I think you're also right. I think you are right that those are probably the 4 right now as the roster stands. Those are the 4 positions of the most need, and that's why I threw in one tech defensive tackle is like the one thing that could throw a wrench into that. I definitely understand the linebacker idea. That could definitely throw a wrench into that too. Obviously, we've seen the Bills doing their due diligence on that front with the visits to Muma and Anderson. So that could definitely throw a wrench into that. But I think you're right. I think there's a chance though with whoever the Bills decide to get as a free agent running back, because I'm pretty dead set that they're going to find someone to replace that McKissick signing. Whether it is a Jalen Richard, whether it is a Justin Jackson, Jerick McKinnon, someone like that. I think that would push running back out of the top 4 rounds, but it's not for certain because at the end of the day, we know how Bean is. If someone falls to him that he likes, he's going to take them. It's not like Jalen Richard is going to stop you from taking Breece Hall if he falls to you at 57. You know, like that's something that doesn't make sense. Jalen Richard, Jerick McKinnon, Justin Jackson, those guys are good options for the complementary piece that we want at running back, but they're not a reason to stop you from drafting a guy that falls to you. So, yeah, that's really my take on your take. I think the only one that could be pushed out of that is running back based on signings the rest of the way in free agency, because I think even if signing is made at wide receiver, even if a signing is made at cornerback, and even if a signing is made at interior offensive line, I think all 3 of those positions will be taken in the first 4 rounds. It's then comes down to what is that 4th position at that 4th round.
Yeah, it's Christian. He comes in and makes a great point. He says, Judge, what about tight end? That's another interesting one. OJ Howard, it's a 1-year deal, right? It's a 1-year deal. It's hard to bring guys back once they prove it. So if OJ Howard proves it, he's probably going to walk. With those physical intangibles, I think OJ Howard, I don't think plans on spending very long in Buffalo, unless it comes down to a situation where Dawson Knox walks and we sign OJ Howard, which I really doubt.
Yeah,
ends up
that'd
being
be
the
wild.
scenario. But yeah, it should be super interesting. I think tight end could throw a wrench into it as well. So that's a good point there from Chris. But I will tell you what, I think we have just about hit all the major talking points this evening. Anything you want to talk about before we close it out here on the show this evening? Anyone in the comment section, anything you want to get off your chest before we head out of here for this evening?
I can't really think of anything. I think we did a good job covering all positions and all weaknesses at all positions, and then relating it back to the draft and what could be done in the later moments of free agency. I think we touched on everything, but yeah, definitely let us know if there's anything that we think we missed in the draft. Randy wants us to do a quick mock.
Here's the thing. We always do that on Dave's computer. So Dave's not here this evening. We always do that on Dave's computer because my computer definitely does not have the RAM to pull up a split screen. So I
could do it if you wanted, but I also understand the allure to waiting.
Yeah,
if we wait, then it creates that unveiling moment after free agency.
One week from today, we will do our first mock draft. Once we maybe let free agency play out a little bit more.
It's got to simmer.
By chance, once the Buffalo Bills wants us to tell Brandon Bean to sign Ronald Jones, his Rojo dream is still alive, just like Randy Hardman's dream of Breece Hall is still alive. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned to Cover One all weekend. Tomorrow night is the debut of the Going Deep podcast with Mike Bunt and Kevin Masseri. So make sure you're checking them out tomorrow night. I'm sure if anything major or crazy happens, someone might go live this weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. And of course, we will be back here on Monday night at 9 p.m. to continue talking about free agency and to start to shift our focus to the NFL draft. So it's draft season again, babe. I haven't looked at a draft spreadsheet. I haven't looked at a draft spreadsheet in like 9 days. I just realized that. And now I feel like I need to go spend a couple hours tonight just because I feel like I've cheated on the draft a little bit with free agency. And
I feel the same way.
I feel dirty.
I took like 5 days off of scouting, and today I felt rusty watching John Mechie for like the first time. so many days.
Go take a shower and then pop on some college tape.
I'm already back into it at this point in free agency. I'm like, I don't know what money we have left. I know what guys are there. I'm just gonna wait and see what news comes to me. I'm back on the draft at this point.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, always appreciate you guys. Like I said, tomorrow night is the debut of the Go Deep podcast with Kevin Masseri and Mike Bunt. For me, Judge Mathis, for Kendall, Mersky Kendall on Twitter. Have a great night, and we will see you on Monday evening.
Are we having fun?